Therefore, everyone will go to socialism, but how you get there will be different from each other depending upon the obstacles placed in your path arriving at socialism, depending upon the level of consciousness of people, depending on so many varied forces. Thus, socialism is different from an ideology. Marxism-Leninism is an ideology. Some people used to think that Marxism-Leninism and socialism meant one and the same thing, even though Marxism-Leninism directs you to socialism. In the past, most people felt that Marxism-Leninism was, underline the word, the only revolutionary force, the only revolutionary ideology to take you towards socialism. As a young man, I had much problems with this. It was because of my culture that I came to resolve the problem. We must tell you something. When one speaks of nationality, when one speaks of sovereignty, one speaks of one's culture. And one must understand the necessity to hold high the integrity of one's culture. Imperialism is a system which struggles on every front to oppress the people, and it struggles extremely vigorously on the cultural front. The job indeed of the enemy is to make you think that you have no culture. Indeed, the job of the enemy is to make you think that your culture and the enemy's culture is one and the same. Once the enemy has you inside his culture, thinking with him, you'll be supporting the interest of the enemy and think you're advancing yourself. Thus, you'll be fighting in Vietnam, you'll be fighting in Gulf of Mexico, you'll be fighting in Grenada, you'll be fighting everywhere for American imperialism, thinking you are advancing yourself, when in fact you are fighting against yourself. The aspect. The aspect then of cultural struggle is crucial, We said this aspect of cultural struggle has been imposed upon the world outside of Europe because of colonization. When colonization occurs, you must come to wipe out the culture. But all oppressed people must carry their culture forward. And if we will look, it is understood by revolutionaries that this is the crucial struggle. Were we to look at China during the time of heightened revolutionary struggle in the past, we will see that that great fighter for humanity, Mao Zedong, called for a cultural revolution. If we will look everywhere in Vietnam, if we will look everywhere in the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, if we will look everywhere throughout Africa where revolution is being waged, as a matter of fact, in Africa, this aspect of cultural revolution became so strong that both Amilcar Cabral and Kwame Ture can say, in fact, liberation is nothing other than an act of culture. Consequently, the cultural revolution is held strong by the colonized masses. It must be. The job, we say, of the enemy everywhere is to underline the importance of you holding up to your culture. As a matter of fact, when you try to hold your culture, they'll call you racist. They'll call you chauvinist. They will call you everything to stop you from holding on to your culture. But you must hold on to your culture, because it's your culture that gives you the solutions to the problems which your people have faced for generations. And it's from this stock of knowledge, and only this stock of knowledge, that you'll be able to get the answer to the problem. The enemy will never give you the solution to oppression. Never. Never. And not only this, you should never look to the enemy. Power is not on the level of implementation. Power begins on the level of conception. Power does not begin on the level of implementation. Power begins on the level of conception. The Vietnamese, a poor people, the Vietnamese, a technologically backward people in relation to America, conceived that they could defeat American imperialism, and they did it. We say power doesn't begin on the level of implementation, only on the level of conception. If an indigenous person in Hawaii becomes some political figure here, a mayor or whatever, he's implementing power. If he doesn't conceive himself as an indigenous person seeking sovereignty, he has no power at all. He has no understanding of power. He is nothing but a cog in a wheel of a system, and he's just part of it, that's all. Power doesn't begin on the level of implementation, it begins on the level of conception. That's why culture becomes so crucial for people who are struggling, because your concepts come from your culture. We want to make two examples using Africa and Pan-Africanism as an example over this question of the necessity for thinking in one's culture. Of course, if one would look at Marxism-Leninism as an ideology, and I want to let everyone know it is for me a revolutionary ideology. I am not a Marxist-Leninist. It doesn't come from my culture, but I know Marxism-Leninism is a revolutionary ideology. If one would look at it, one would see that one of the prerequisites of Marxism-Leninism on its march to communism is atheism. Of course, communism itself is made up of three parts: historical materialism, dialectical materialism, and philosophical materialism. Philosophical materialism, in the hands of European culture, becomes atheist. Therefore, if one is a Marxist-Leninist, one must deny the existence of God. Let me show you a contradiction I had as a young man in New York. As I said, at 16 years of age, I came into contact with the reading of Marx. Here, among members of young socialist leagues and members of young communist league, I was doing much reading with Marx and making much advancement and, of course, learning a lot and being inspired, etc., etc. By the age of 18 years old, the movement in the South had broken out seriously. I was going to join the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. My mentors, with whom I was studying, came to give me some advice. It's only normal, as a matter of fact, quite courteous. Among the political advice they gave me was this: you must remember, Kwame, when you go there, do not let your people believe in God. You must tell them there is no God. If they do not know this, they will win victories. The enemy will use God, confuse them, and set them back. It sounded quite logical. But when I got to the South, all the meetings for the movements were held in the church. All the meetings began with a prayer. And when the people were getting ready to go face the police dogs and fire hoses, they sang hymns. I recall one incident in particular. That was a day when I was making some demonstrations in Greenwood, Mississippi, and had to fill the town with jail. It was the third day. I myself would be going to jail this day. As an organizer, I had one line for those going to jail and other lines to harass the police for those who would not go to jail. But as I looked for the line, with the police line that was going to jail, I saw an elderly lady. I ran quickly. Ma'am, I said, you're on the wrong line. This is the line to go to jail. You should be on this line. She said, no, son, I'm going to jail. I said, ma'am, you are on the wrong line. This is the jail line. You must go on that line. She said, no, son, I know you're going to jail. I'm going to jail. I said, you can't go to jail. Why not? I said, they brutalized you. She said, I know. They brutalized my daughter, brutalized my granddaughter. Now I've got to go. I said, no, ma'am, you can't go. There's no respecter of age in there. They're going to brutalize you. She said, I've got to go, son. She said, son, are you worried about me? I said, yes, ma'am, I'm very worried. She said, don't you worry about me. I got a telephone in my bosom. As soon as they arrest me, I'm going to call up Jesus. He's going to take care of me. If I'm a Marxist Leninist, I got to tell her, hey, take the telephone out your bosom. The social reality of Africa is entirely different from that of Europeans on the question of religion. Even today in America, they're the most religious community. Some of us think they're too religious. This, of course, has to do with the history and culture of Africa. Let us take some looks. Africa's contributions to all world religions are outstanding. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, one of the first sacred books of the world, came out of Africa. This book was compiled some 4,000 years ago, 2,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name. It was in Africa, if one would look at that period of time, certainly before the birth of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, name, that gave monotheism to the world, belief in one God. It is therefore logical that Africa gave Judaism to the world, the religion, chronologically speaking, which first preached monotheism. Of course, it is clear that Africa gave Judaism to the world. Racism everywhere will try to make it appear as if it's not true, but there's no discussion here. A cursory look at the glance of history at that time will show it. To the east of Africa, in Persia, now called Iran, they were worshiping the sun, and would do so for centuries. To the north of Africa, in Saudi Arabia and Palestine, where we're told that Judaism came from, they were worshiping idols, and would do so until the 6th century AD, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon his name, went there to civilize them and give them a monotheism religion in the form of Islam. It is clear then that Judaism could only develop in a continent that had already worked out monotheism and was breathing it in. We give you for your documentation a book by Sigmund Freud, his last book. It's entitled Moses and Monotheism. A quick glance at this book will show you all what we say. Freud here himself, using anthropological, using historical, using sociological and psychoanalysis proofs, comes to show the world that Judaism was given to the world by Africa. Africa stabilized Christianity for the world. The other day I was talking to a man, he's a white man, said he was a Christian, and I asked about Africa. He said, I don't care about Africa. I said, you're a Christian? He said, yes. Oh, I laughed at him. He got upset. I'm a revolutionary. Truth never quivers before lies. It crushes it without pity and without mercy. I laughed harder. So, you're a Christian, yeah, and you say you don't care about Africa? How can you say that, Kwame Ture? Well, I can lightly tell you if there was no Africa, there'd be no Christianity. When Jesus Christ, peace be upon his name, was in trouble and everyone wanted to kill him, it was only Africa that granted him refuge. It was here that he grew. It was here that he grew physically, spiritually, and certainly intellectually, and since Africa had already worked out monotheism, he was breathing it in, preparing him for his later work in life.